In March 2003, Manchester United was in the midst of a golden era, an incredible period of dominance during which they won 13 out of 21 Premier League titles, 2 European Cups, 4 FA Cups and 3 League Cups. Nobody knew it then, but on March 2nd, 2003, the first seed was planted that would grow and end this golden era, bringing about Manchester United's worst season in decades. On this day, the Glazers bought their first stake in Man United. This is the story of how the Glazers destroyed Man United. To understand how the Glazers ruined Man United, we first need to know how the Glazers bought United. The Rock of Gibraltar feud was a key moment. Alongside football, Sir Alex Ferguson had a huge passion for horse racing. Sir Alex Ferguson and Sue Magnier, wife of the then shareholder of United, John Magnier, owned a legendary horse called the Rock of Gibraltar. The partnership proved fruitful as the horse won numerous races. However, the relationship soured in 2003 when the horse retired. The horse was estimated to be worth millions, and Sir Alex believed he was owed fees once the horse started breeding. John Magnier disputed this. Sir Alex would go on to say, "I was told that I had been given half of the Rock of Gibraltar. It was a wonderful gesture, but when it came to stud rights, I was told I had no claim. I had no choice but to protect what I believed was mine." Sir Alex would sue John Magnier, which would lead to a bitter feud that even affected the club. Roy Keane would later say in his autobiography, "Somebody I met in Ireland had told me to tell him, 'You are not going to win this.' I mentioned it to him. And I told him that I didn't think it was good for the club, for the manager in a legal dispute with shareholders. I felt I was entitled to say that. He was just a mascot for them, walking around with this Rock of Gibraltar. Look at me, how big I am, and he didn't even own the bloody thing." As the legal battle escalated, John Magnier and JP McManus quietly increased their stake in United. In May 2005, when Malcolm Glazer offered to buy their 28.7% stake, they immediately agreed. Within a month, the Glazer family owned a 98% share in United in a deal worth £800 million. The whole dispute was only briefly mentioned in Sir Alex's autobiography in 2013. Obviously, there was a potential clash between my racing interests and the ownership of the club, and when a man stood up at the AGM and insisted that I resign, there was awkwardness for me. I have to say that at no point was I sidetracked from my duties as manager of Manchester United. I have an excellent family lawyer in 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, and he managed the process on my behalf. Before moving on, please consider liking, sharing and subscribing. The channel is close to hitting our goal of 3K subscribers by the end of the year. We upload a new video every 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. Unfortunately, this was just the start of United's problems. The issue was not just the Glazers' acquisition of United, but how they did it. Despite the Glazers' immense wealth, they didn't just use a credit card to purchase United. Instead, they used a leveraged buyout, raising £600 million in loans, which were secured against the club's assets. This resulted in significant financial obligations for the club. They went from being a club with about £50 million in debt to one that was £604 million in debt and required huge interest loan payments every year. The yearly loan payments were a staggering £60 million a year. To put this into perspective, in 2005, Zidane was still the world record signing at around £50 million. Over the last 20 years, according to the BBC, Manchester United is believed to have paid an eye-watering £1.2 billion in debt interest, debt repayments, dividends, and fees to the family. Remarkably, BBC journalist Wesley Stevenson described this as a conservative estimate too. But it does not include various fees to banks, financial advisors, and other financing costs, including currency hedging. It also does not include the cash that has left the club in the form of directors' fees. All this financial turmoil has led to United's decline in the football financial hierarchy. Deloitte publish a yearly financial ranking of the revenue generated by football teams across the world. In the first 8 years of the rankings, from 1996 to 97 to 2003 to 04, United ranked number 1 8 years in a row. However, since then, United have only come first twice, in the 2015-16 and 2016-17 seasons. Real Madrid have since dominated, coming first 14 times, including 11 times in a row. Even Manchester City have come first twice in recent years. In addition to siphoning money from the club, the Glazers have provided virtually no investment in the club's infrastructure. Old Trafford best demonstrates this. This legendary stadium was once regarded as one of the finest in the UK and the world. However, in the past 20 years, it has been left to rot. The main stand became infamous for leaking whenever it rained, to the point where rival fans sang "Old Trafford is falling." Even their food seemed to suffer, as they were given a 1-star food hygiene rating from the Food Standards Agency in 2023. The fall has been so dramatic that Old Trafford will not be one of the 10 host stadiums when the UK and Ireland host Euro 2028. Gary Neville was scathing in his response in 2023. They have overseen a decline for 20 years, in which it has gone from being one of the best stadiums in the world to one that can't even get into the top 10 in the UK and Ireland. This is an all-time low. There has been no investment, it is a rusty stadium, there is a dereliction of duty. All this had led to a significant decline on the pitch after Sir Alex retired in 2013. The Glazers appeared to have little to no long-term strategy, as they employed various managers of differing styles. David Moyes, Louis van Gaal, Jose Mourinho, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Ralf Rangnick and Erik ten Hag have all failed to win a league title or European Cup. Even when managers tried to fix the issues at the club, they were seemingly ignored. Mourinho claimed on John Obi Mikel's podcast that there are still people in that club, and when I say people, I mean some players, but also some other people that are not players, that are still there when I told United after 2 months, with these people you are never going to do it, and they are still there. At Man United, I changed a player at half-time. His agent was then accusing me of bullying. Roy Keane also highlighted how the Glazers undermined their managers. No owner of a good business, when it's failing in its core activity, would take money out of its business. They've undermined managers over the last 10 years by elevating the players to a godlike status. The lack of football knowledge and long-term planning has also led to a significant amount of money being wasted on player recruitment. For years, United had no director of football, and spent a staggering £1.7 billion since 2013, much of which has been allocated to players who have earned huge wages. Among the more high-profile flops are Alexis Sanchez, Jadon Sancho, Paul Pogba, and Donny van de Beek. Even when successful veteran players join the club, they seem to struggle, as seen with Bastian Schweinsteiger. Each manager came into the club with their style of play, bringing in players before being sacked, which meant the cycle repeated itself when the next manager arrived and was sacked. Gary Neville has continued to criticise their lack of planning and strategy when signing players. I never thought for 1 second they would challenge Man City and Arsenal from the players that they brought in. Manchester United have again allowed the manager to influence the signings. They have got no strength at the very top. The tenure of Ed Woodward perhaps best sums up the failure of United's upper management. Ed advised the Glazers during their 2005 takeover. The Glazers rewarded him by hiring him to work on financial planning, and he eventually became CEO of United in 2013, following David Gill's departure alongside Sir Alex. According to ESPN reports, Ed thought the job would be simple. Ed would boast that the deals he had done while working in the city banking were far bigger than any football transfer. A United staff member told ESPN, he thought football deals would be easy in comparison. There was a frustration that issues or key decisions would go to Ed and Joel Glazer. But days or weeks would pass without anything being resolved or communicated back down the chain. The search for a new director of football being an obvious example. It was announced in 2019 and nothing happened for 2 years. Solskjaer talked about the slow nature of United's recruitment when trying to sign Erling Haaland on the Stick to Football podcast. Erling was with me at Molde for 2 seasons, more or less. The summer before I came, I rang the club and said, "You have to sign this boy. He is going to be absolutely top class." That was in June or July, and they said they didn't have enough reports. By the time I came in as caretaker, Mulder had sold him to Salzburg. I'd tell the club straight away, buy him. He had a release clause. No one else then would have paid that money. It was 20 million euros, and it would have been a bargain. It was the club's decision to not go for him then. In 2023, there seemed to be a light at the end of the tunnel for United when the Glazers began to consider selling their stake. There were two bids, one from 𝐃𝐨𝐧'𝐭, reportedly worth £5.5 billion, which would include all debts being cleared. The other bid was from Sir Jim Ratcliffe, worth £1.25 billion for a 27.7% stake. This deal would include Sir Jim taking control of football relations despite the Glazers holding a majority stake. The Glazers chose Sir Jim's offer. The Guardian was scathing of the fact that the Glazers retained control of United but no longer led football operations, referring to it as an example of asset economy. Guardian reporter Jonathan Liu explained, "In the past decade, United have spent less than Fulham and Leicester and barely more than Brighton on infrastructure development. Meanwhile, against a backdrop of chronic underinvestment and net debt of about £773 million, the Glazer family has made about £1.3 billion from share sales and dividend payouts since taking over at United. This is how the asset economy works. The asset itself becomes your paycheck, and everyone who needs it essentially works for you. Put simply, the Glazers can continue to generate substantial profits from United without having to do anything. All of this led to the 2024-25 season, one of the worst in the history of Manchester United. Once again, summarised by a lack of decisive decision-making and long-term planning. Ten Hag's status at United was on the ropes leading into the season. But United not only kept him for another year, but also decided to extend his contract by another season until 2026. It took just 4 months for United to overturn the decision. In October 2024, Ten Hag was sacked. United chose Ruben Amorim as the new manager. Once again, meaning another manager had come in without his players, Amorim led United to numerous unwanted records. Their lowest points tally when converted to 3 points for a win since 1931. The most defeats in a season in the Premier League era with 18. Most defeats at home since 1963. Amorim ended the season with a win percentage record of just 25%. Gary Neville blamed the Glazers for the awful season. Watching United matches at the moment is hard work. I prefer not to be given United games. That's a really bad conclusion for me to be at. The succession planning. When I think about it from a business perspective, what happened post Sir Alex and David Gill was horrific. 100% falls upon the owners in the Glazer family. And that is how the Glazer family ended the golden era of Manchester United and led them to one of the worst ever seasons. I upload a new video every 2 weeks. If you'd like to learn more, please hit subscribe. Thanks for watching.